Welcome to episode 10 of Literally Speaking All Things AIS, the official podcast of Augusta Independent School District. I'm Tim Littrell, and I'm excited you're joining us. Today, we'll start with a few quick updates from around the district, and then we'll talk with our special guest, Superintendent Lisa McCane, before moving on to our AIS Spotlight and wrapping up with our In the Loop segment. We'll begin with AISD Headlines, a segment to share important district news and celebrate accomplishments. On Thursday, February 12th, the groundbreaking ceremony was held for the new multi-purpose educational gymnasium facility. Local officials made brief remarks about the project before school board members, school administrators, project leaders, and community leaders participated in the ceremonial groundbreaking. Following that, guests were invited into the library for light refreshments and networking. State Representative William Lawrence was one of the guest speakers who made remarks.
There's a lot of events that we as politicians get to go to, but not all of them are like this one. This is one that we have worked on very hard. We get to see this come to life. To know that I had just a little part of this is just an honor for me to know that, and I can't wait to see this building when we get that done. It's going to mean so much to this community.
The lead architect on the project, Craig Ossie, also made some remarks about the project.
Yeah, we started planning for this about 15 years ago. And the board started saving their funds back, and they got the money together right about 2021 when all the prices doubled after COVID. So it's been a struggle to get here today, and I greatly appreciate everybody in the community and in the school board working hard to make sure that we got here. The challenges for this project are interesting. You have this wonderful historic building, and with that comes a lot of responsibility. And so we have to respect that in what we're doing, but we have to make it handicap accessible to get from those classrooms into the new gym, which is going to hold 1,000 people, all above the floodplain, which right now you're about ankle deep in that. So we had several pieces that we were juggling to make this work. I think it's going to come together beautifully.
In the coming weeks, work along Frankfort Street to relocate utility lines should begin. The high school academic team competed in the High School District Governor's Cup competition on January 31st. Augusta had 3 medalists in the assessment competition. Will Hildebrand was the winner of the mathematics assessment, finishing first, while also finishing 5th in written composition. Joe Beth Schmidt was the science champion, while also placing 5th in arts and humanities. Nora Gill placed 3rd in social studies and 4th place in language arts. The elementary academic team competed in the Elementary District Governor's Cup on February 7th. Augusta had 2 medalists in the assessment competition. Bristol Tucker was the winner of the Arts and Humanities assessment, placing 1st, and she also placed 2nd in science. Hunter Hurst earned 4th place in social studies. Augusta was also awarded the Hume Sportsmanship Award. The 39th District Tournament will get underway on February 23rd. The Lady Panthers are the 3 seed in the district and will face Bracken County on the 23rd. The game will begin 25 minutes after the conclusion of the 6 o'clock game between Mason County and St. Pat. The Panthers are also a 3 seed and will face Mason County on February 24th. The game will begin 25 minutes after the conclusion of the 6 o'clock game between Bracken County and St. Pat. The championship games will be held on February 26th, beginning at 6 o'clock. Today, we're glad to be joined by Superintendent Lisa McCane. Ms. McCane, appreciate you joining us for your debut on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Littrell. I really appreciate it. I was wondering when it was going to be my turn.
Yeah, I knew you'd had a busy stretch there. I was trying to let you get through some of those. Not that you're not always busy, but, for our families, especially that are newer to the district, maybe they didn't go here as parents. You've been the superintendent for the last 15 years. And some people may only know you from that position. So I thought it'd be good to start to take us through sort of your educational career and your background.
Yes. So my educational career actually started in Lewis County, which is where I'm originally from. And I started as an elementary teacher at Tollsboro Elementary, teaching 3rd through 6th grades. I then obtained my master's in guidance counseling and then ended up getting a position after 3 years there as guidance counselor at Straub Elementary in Mason County. After a couple of years in that position, I had obtained another master's in principalship and instructional leadership and moved into an assistant principal role there. spent a total of 5 years in Mason County, and then had the opportunity to come to Augusta Independent. And at that time, I really didn't know a whole lot about Augusta Independent. I was contacted by our former superintendent, John Cordell, and he was the newly hired superintendent, had given me a little history about Augusta, and I came to visit and took the position as principal K through 12. So that was a real challenge in the beginning, and there was a lot of challenges here, but I ended up just absolutely loving it. I mean, now Augusta is where my heart is, and was principal for 8 years, and now finishing up my 15th year as superintendent. And I couldn't be happier, and there's not another district I would ever want to be in.
I guess that's a commonality between us. Mr. Cordell hired you, and you've remained here long term. Mr. Cordell hired me. You, I believe, were maybe out on a bus the day that I interviewed as English teacher, and so Mr. Cordell hired me as the English teacher. And of course, 17, 18 years later, when I thought maybe this would be a 1 or 2 year stop and I would move back home, I'm still here as well.
Well, and that's funny. So I wasn't out on a bus. I was on vacation. And I remember Mr. Cordell said, I hope you don't mind, but I went on and made a hire while you were absent. He said he's a very young English teacher, but I think he will do very, very well. He said, but I'm going to warn you, before you see him, he looks very, very youthful. And so I thought, okay, well, fresh out of college, 22-year-olds do look youthful. And I have to say, Mr. Literal, you are the most youthful I have ever seen. And I've told you for years that will serve you well as you get older. And here you are now, 40 years old?
41.
41, and I'm telling you, he still is the most youthful 41-year-old I think I've ever seen.
Good genes, I guess. Good genes.
It is.
So, obviously, you've spent a lot of years as principal and superintendent. How would you describe your leadership style? Because, obviously, as principal and superintendent, you lead classified and support staff, certified teachers, students even. How do you describe your leadership style and how you inspire others to reach their goals?
Right. Well, I would describe my leadership style as democratic, in that I'm someone that I like to collaborate with, members of my administrative team, with the teachers, paraprofessionals, and I really want them to participate in the decision making and really want to engage with them, get their opinions. One of my favorite quotes is, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And so I think it's really important that we work together as a team, and I have everyone's input, because one of the things is, imagine one person making all of these very complex decisions. And I've always found early on in my career that when you get the input from everyone, the outcome is always, always much better. And it gives everyone a sense of pride when they have been part of that process. And I would also say that there's a little bit of my style that is what's called transformational leadership, in that that's where that motivation of employees, comes into play, where I try to encourage employees to develop new skills, to continue their education, maybe in an area that I will observe a strength in, maybe in an area where they didn't even think about that they could be highly successful in. And, when you have that with the fact that everyone has that same long-term vision for where you want the district to go, it's just really been a very successful approach. And I will use you as an example, Mr. Literal. You were a high school English teacher here at Augusta when I was principal, and I saw a lot of qualities and skills that I knew when I took the role as superintendent, that you would make an outstanding finance officer and technology director. You had shown a lot of leadership skills, and I had seen your work ethic. And as a high school English teacher, it was probably not something that you were expecting to be asked to become the finance officer.
Certainly not finance. Technology on the radar, not so much the finance.
But it's worked out very well.
It's worked out. As I always said, in a small district, you take the opportunities when they come.
That's right.
And you touched on it, your style of working collaboratively. And I feel like here as our administrative team, it's a very diverse administrative team, diverse age, diverse backgrounds. And I think that really helps when we're going through decision making in our administrative team meetings. It brings a lot of perspectives and viewpoints to decisions, which I'm sure helps give you some things that maybe you hadn't thought of when making a decision.
Right. And that's exactly right. I mean, one person can't think of everything, working together as a team. The outcome, the end product is always going to be better working together.
So one of the major things happening now in the district, of course it's been in the news a bit here locally, is that we're embarking on the construction project of our new multi-purpose educational gymnasium facility. I know this idea goes back really years and years, at least in theory or in planning. Take us sort of through the history of when this first started being discussed and getting to where we are now today, having just done the groundbreaking.
This project goes back at least 2 decades. It goes back to when John Cordell was superintendent. There was discussion then with the board about building an auxiliary gym. Because one gym in a school district that is serving 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high school, is very challenging. So he was looking at some options at the time of using general funds to build something, even like a metal building that we could just hold practices in and so on. And so when I became superintendent, we explored that option more. We actually went to the F.A. Niter building at the time, which is now the Augusta Distillery, for possibly purchasing that property and turning that into an auxiliary gym. And what we learned is every year that was going by, the prices were getting more and more. What we thought at one time we could build a metal building for $200,000, when we got the quotes, it was more like $500,000. And the same with the F.A. Niter building. So what we ended up realizing is that it was going to take a capital construction project and using special building funds in order to be able to build a new multi-purpose educational gymnasium facility. So at that point, the board charged me to explore funding options, and so I had worked closely with RSA Advisors, which is our financial advisors, and they issue bonds for school districts. And we looked at how we might be able to do this. And what we found is Augusta, being so small, had very limited bonding potential and not enough bonding potential to build the gymnasium. So somewhere around, this was around 2017, 16, 17, we knew we were going to have to pass a local nickel so that we could get some additional revenue into our building funds so that we would have enough bonding potential. And so we were successful in passing that local nickel in 2018. And then we moved forward in 2019 with the planning of the project, and the architect was designing the facility. We had done a lot of groundwork, such as soil studies, asbestos abatement. So several pieces of the project were already underway. And then as we were fully funded at that time at $5.2 million, we then got hit with the pandemic. And at that point, That is in 2020 that it really halted our project. And so we were in a position then that we couldn't move forward. Because of rising cost of building materials, it just put us out of reach of the project. At that point, we learned that that project had gone to about $8.5 million. That was around 2021. We had some ESSER funds involved with that funding that had to be spent. And so what we ended up doing was, because part of the gym project was going to be a new boiler system, so we were able to pull that part of it out of that initial project and use those ESSER funds to install a new boiler system last year. And as the years went on, a couple more years passed. After new estimates, the project came in at around $10 million. And so we knew we were too far out of reach. That's when a group of superintendents who were caught with that same issue. There were 22 school districts in Kentucky who had projects underway and were unable to move forward because they didn't have the funding to complete their projects. So we've worked a couple of years, with our legislators and advocating for gap funding, and successfully was able to receive half of the gap, which is $2.6 million last year. And we're very grateful to Senator Shelley Fromeyer and Representative William Lawrence and all of the General Assembly for those funds. And after we received those, what we had was about $7.6 million. And so all of the project partners came together, and we had to be creative and use some creative solutions to come up with how we could start the project. Because if we didn't start the project now, what would happen is, because of inflation and continued rising cost of building materials, here in a couple of more years, it would be out of reach for us again. And so we took our plans and we divided it into a phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 allows us to complete the exterior, and phase 2 will complete the interior. So currently we are in the process of advocating for the remaining gap funds that we need to complete the project. And so it's something that, I've been to Frankfurt already and been advocating for those funds and working closely with our legislators. So that is where we currently are, but just being able to break ground last week was an absolute, momentous occasion that, we're very proud of, and it has been about 20 years in the making.
You touched on the fact that obviously we're 3 levels here, elementary, middle school, and high school, and how challenging that is to have, only one gymnasium. Talk about the value and benefits of this new addition will bring to Augusta Independent, because certainly it services athletics, but it goes far beyond that.
It does. And that's why we're calling it a multi-purpose educational gymnasium facility, because here at Augusta, it is much more than just a gymnasium. It serves as an actual academic learning classroom. It's actually, we consider it to be our largest classroom in the building. Not only do we have physical education classes, but we also have so many other academic focused, instructional focused programs that's happening in that gymnasium space every single day, from science fairs to drama club to classes coming in for various things. I'll give you a great example. Coming up is the Amazing Shake program. And so we really look at that as a instructional space that we've needed for a long time to be able to accommodate everyone, to have adequate, kind of equitable use of that space. And oftentimes what happens here at Augusta is, we lose some instructional time because we have to close the gymnasium so often. And you know this, Mr. Literal, from just being here and being part of the athletic program and academics, is we will have to close it for some other type of, maybe it's a community program, maybe we're having graduation, for example, and so we have to close the gym for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. And so you can see where students are losing valuable instructional time. So this is really going to maximize the learning here at Augusta and really bring opportunities to both academics and athletics that otherwise students wouldn't have. And I don't want to leave out the fact that, this is not just for the school, this is for the community, and it's a space that, we think we'll be able to offer when there's a community need that comes up, that they'll be able to use our spaces as well.
We will continue with part 2 of our interview with Ms. McCane on the March 6th episode. Now it's time for our AIS Spotlight. Today we're highlighting our Read to Achieve program. Kentucky's Read to Achieve program, or RTA, is a state education program and grant administered by the Kentucky Department of Education. The program is designed to help Kentucky schools support students in kindergarten through 3rd grade who may struggle with reading. The goal of the RTA program is to help young learners develop strong reading skills by providing funds for assessments and evidence-based reading interventions. Schools use RTA grant money to implement structured literacy instruction such as phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, and comprehension. The program also helps fund professional learning for teachers. Here are some literacy tips for families to help their children at home with reading. Read aloud to your child frequently, pointing to words while reading to show them the left to right flow. Model fluent reading using expressive voices for characters and pause at punctuation. Asking questions about stories you read or having your child retell the stories in their own words to help build comprehension skills. Play rhyming games and or sing or read nursery rhymes. Use magnetic letters to practice letter to sound recognition or to build words. Practice writing letters in sand, shaving cream, or crayons to connect handwriting to letter recognition. And visit the public library to check out books and participate in their programs, as most of these are free. Before we wrap up, it's time to keep you in the loop. CTE testing for seniors will take place on February 24th. Augusta Independent will celebrate Dr. Seuss's Read Across America Week, March 2nd through March 6th. The Scholastic Book Fair will also return that week. Finally, spring individual and class pictures are scheduled for March 4th. That's it for today. We appreciate Superintendent Lisa McCane for joining us. New episodes drop on the 1st and 3rd Friday of each month, so we'll be back on March 6th with episode 11. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I'm Tim Literal, and this has been Literally Speaking, all things AIS. Until next time, stay connected, stay learning, and stay Panther proud.